June 3rd, 2025. The war in Ukraine grinds on. Hope for a quick end long gone. Recent events have sharply escalated tensions. Ukrainian drone strikes have reached deep into Russian territory. The conflict, once contained, now sends shockwaves far beyond Ukraine. These attacks mark a shift in Ukraine's strategy and capabilities. Russia, feeling cornered, grows more unpredictable. The world watches, anxious. Global leaders voice concern as the stakes rise. This is no longer just a regional war. The risk of miscalculation grows. A single misstep could ignite a wider conflict. The shadow of a potential World War III looms. How did we reach this point? And can diplomacy pull us back from the brink? These are urgent questions, not academic ones. The safety of millions hangs in the balance. In early June 2025, Ukraine launched a massive drone assault on 4 Russian military airfields, some thousands of kilometers from its border. Over 120 drones, reportedly smuggled into Russia, struck deep and hard. Ukraine claims over 40 Russian aircraft destroyed or damaged, including nuclear-capable bombers. The estimated cost billions. Russia's response was a mix of denial and outrage. State media downplayed the attack, but military hardliners called for severe retribution. Some compared it to Russia's own Pearl Harbor. Ukraine's message, nowhere in Russia is safe, and the cost of war is rising. The hope is to force Moscow to negotiate, but the risks are immense. Former President Medvedev promised retaliation. The Kremlin's paranoia is at a new high. Officially, NATO and the US are not combatants. No troops on the ground, no direct engagement. Yet, their support is crucial. Advanced weapons, intelligence, and training flow steadily to Ukraine. The Biden administration has backed Ukraine's drone program, and intelligence sharing is key. Could Ukraine have pulled off the June drone strikes alone? Many doubt it. Analysts suspect US and NATO intelligence played a role. This fuels Russian claims of a proxy war. The line between indirect aid and direct involvement is blurring. As Ukraine's attacks grow bolder, the risk of miscalculation rises. Russia may see Western support as a direct threat. The balancing act grows more precarious with every strike. The world holds its breath. War escalates by its own logic, often defying initial intentions and careful planning. It's a dangerous climb where each step upward makes turning back increasingly difficult. Action and reaction, a constant interplay of moves and countermoves that can quickly spiral out of control. Each side pushing harder, testing the limits and seeking any advantage, no matter how small. Ukraine, outgunned, turns to asymmetric tactics, leveraging ingenuity and adaptability to level the playing field. Drones, becoming ubiquitous eyes in the sky, and precision strike weapons. Sabotage, undermining the enemy's capabilities from within. Deep strikes, reaching far behind enemy lines to disrupt supply chains and command centers. These attacks offset Russia's advantages, forcing them to constantly reevaluate their strategy and resource allocation, but provoke a wounded adversary, one that may lash out in unpredictable and dangerous ways. Russia's response is critical, a decision point that could determine the future course of the war. If it feels its strategic assets or occupied territories are threatened, the pressure to escalate will intensify. Escalation is likely a dangerous gamble with potentially devastating consequences. This could mean more brutal attacks in Ukraine, a further descent into the horrors of war, or even actions beyond its borders, widening the conflict and drawing in new participants. The Kremlin's red lines remain vague, adding to the uncertainty and risk, and dangerously flexible, shifting with the tides of the conflict. The risk the conflict spills into neighboring countries, destabilizing the region and creating new flashpoints, or draws NATO in, triggering a much larger and more dangerous confrontation. A single misjudgment, an accidental strike on NATO territory, or a deliberate provocation designed to test the alliance's resolve, could trigger a much wider war, a global conflict with unimaginable consequences. The cycle of escalation is easy to start, fueled by fear, mistrust, and a desire for dominance, but nearly impossible to stop once the momentum builds and the stakes become too high. Each move raises the stakes, pushing the world closer to the brink. The world stands on a knife's edge, teetering between peace and catastrophe. The path forward is perilous, fraught with danger and uncertainty. The next step could be catastrophic, a point of no return. The specter of nuclear weapons haunts this conflict, a chilling reminder of the stakes involved. The potential for escalation is ever present, casting a long shadow over the entire situation. Russia's arsenal is vast, a sprawling collection of destructive power accumulated over decades. and Putin's threats are thinly veiled, often delivered with a chilling certainty that sends shivers down the spines of world leaders. He knows the power he holds. The recent strikes on strategic bombers touch a sensitive nuclear nerve, highlighting the vulnerability of even the most heavily defended assets. Russia's core deterrent, submarines and ICBMs, remains intact, a silent and deadly force lurking beneath the waves and hidden in hardened silos. But the risk of nuclear use grows as the stakes rise, a dangerous equation where desperation could outweigh reason. The world watches with bated breath. If Russia perceives an existential threat or catastrophic defeat, a scenario where its very survival is at stake, its doctrine allows for nuclear use, even tactical weapons, smaller yield devices intended for battlefield use. Even a limited nuclear strike would shatter decades of taboo, breaking the unspoken agreement that has prevented nuclear war for generations, and unleash global chaos, triggering a chain reaction of fear, panic, and potentially further escalation. The Kremlin's paranoia is a wild card, an unpredictable element that makes rational calculation nearly impossible. Hardliners demand a stronger response, pushing for more aggressive action and dismissing any talk of de-escalation. Rejecting peace talks, seeing diplomacy as a sign of weakness and preferring to pursue their objectives through force. A direct attack on a NATO state would almost certainly trigger Article 5, the cornerstone of the alliance's security. NATO's collective defense. An agreement that an attack on one member is an attack on all. That would mean direct war between Russia and NATO, a catastrophic conflict with unimaginable consequences. Leaders desperately want to avoid this scenario, working tirelessly to find a diplomatic solution and prevent the unthinkable. Yet, the risk of Russian retaliation against NATO targets is now openly discussed, a grim acknowledgement of the potential for escalation. The nuclear shadow looms larger than ever, a constant reminder of the fragility of peace and the devastating potential of this conflict. The world feels the weight of history, a palpable sense of unease settling over nations. Echoes of past crises resonate, a stark reminder of humanity's capacity for self-destruction, but with new dangers lurking in the shadows. World War III is no longer just a phrase relegated to history books or dystopian fiction. It's a real fear gripping the hearts and minds of people across the globe. Experts warn that the path to a much wider and devastating conflict is becoming clearer with each passing day, with more potential triggers emerging from unexpected corners of the world. Sustained Ukrainian attacks deep within Russian territory, pushing the boundaries of acceptable engagement, could provoke a desperate and unpredictable response from the Kremlin. If Russia becomes convinced that NATO is actively seeking regime change within its borders, perceiving a direct threat to its sovereignty, escalation, however dangerous, may seem like its only viable option for survival. Any use of nuclear weapons, regardless of its scale or tactical intent, would be utterly catastrophic, unleashing unimaginable devastation. The failed peace talks in Istanbul, a missed opportunity for de-escalation, have only served to further fuel existing tensions and animosities. Germany, Britain, France and Poland are rapidly rearming, bolstering their military capabilities in response to the perceived threat. Meanwhile, US-China tensions continue to simmer beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. German troops are now permanently stationed in Lithuania, a symbolic move demonstrating NATO's commitment to defending its eastern flank, directly bordering Russia, a provocative act in the eyes of Moscow. These global shifts, these tectonic movements in the geopolitical landscape, add an unprecedented level of volatility to an already precarious situation. The world is demonstrably less able to absorb the economic and social shocks emanating from the ongoing war in Ukraine, further exacerbating existing vulnerabilities. The risk of a catastrophic escalation is not just real, it's demonstrably growing with each passing day, demanding immediate and concerted action. The world is undeniably on edge, teetering on the brink of a potential abyss. Are we on the brink of World War III? We're closer than we'd like. The risks are real, but a global conflict is not inevitable. There are still off-ramps, if leaders act with courage and restraint. Russia's willingness to negotiate, the West's resolve, and Ukraine's tactics will shape what comes next. Diplomatic channels must stay open, even when talks seem impossible. Communication is essential to prevent disaster. De-escalation must be prioritized, finding ways to reduce tensions without surrender. Arms control agreements need to be revisited and strengthened. The goal: strategic stability, not victory at any cost. Avoiding a wider war demands global effort and long-term thinking. The world is watching, hoping for a turn away from confrontation. The alternative is too devastating to imagine.